morning. This is VirtualPBX admin training. Getting a slightly late start, so I do apologize for that. But let's go ahead and get started. So on the screen here, you see our login page, which is at dash.virtualpbx.com. To log in, you do need your email address, your password, which should have been emailed to you, and your account name, which is typically your company name. Now, if for some reason you don't have your password or you can't remember, down here towards the bottom right, you forgot your info. And we'll, again, need your email address, and then either the account name or a phone number on the account. And then you would click on Reset Password. You'll get an email with a link that lets you change your password. And once you change that password via the reset link, the system will log you back out and make you log in with that new password. But beyond that, you enter your password, and for most people, I say just click on the Remember Me. And that way you don't have to memorize yet another password. And then we'll be taken here to the dashboard page shortly. Now this is on a test account that's been in existence for a while. If this is your first time logging in to Dash, you'll actually be taken to your account page, which you can get to by clicking on your name here at the top. Standard users can only see this kind of information here, where they can adjust their email address or their own password, as well as change their time zone. As an admin, you also have this account level settings. And the main thing that's changed here is time zone for the account, right? So that way you can make it, customize it to your location. Now, as I mentioned, this is a test account. So on a live account, admins also have a section below here where it says user for billing information. So they can update their credit card information here, the billing contact, they can see their service plan, and they can also get their invoices. When you're done here in the account pages, you just click on close and you'll be taken here to the dashboard. So along the top here, again, clicking on your name takes you to that account page. The D&D toggle, if you click on that, that actually puts you in do not disturb mode. That means you're not getting calls. You notice it turned a little white right there. If I click it back, I've just turned it off. Little help icon here takes you to a couple different things. Well, one, chat with us will open up a chat window so you can talk to our support team. They can walk you through whatever features you're going through. The learn more takes you to our support pages, right? So under virtualpbx.com, if you mouse over dash or support and then go to dash support, that's the same location here. But those will be guides for individual features. A few videos are there as well. The web phone, this only shows up if you've enabled a web phone on your user. It will take you to webphone.virtualpbx.net, so you can use Chrome or Firefox on a computer to make and receive calls. And then lastly here, we've got the online store that takes you to store.virtualpbx.com, where you can order a VoIP phone, for example, among other things. Over here, the menu icon or hamburger icon. Right now we're on the dashboard and we have these other features of Dash. Some of these, like ACDQs, do have fees associated with them. Others, like Blacklist, do not. I'll try to make sure to highlight those. And then we have the option here to log out. And then over here on the left, these are the various other core features of Dash, which we'll be going through in depth. In the middle here, total users, I have 16. That means these are people who are making and receiving calls on my account. Depending on your plan, adding users may increase your bill, so that is something to be aware of. Then we have total devices, and then they're broken down. All right, so I have 33 total devices. Here I have, looks like 14 cell phones. Then I've got 10 web phones, right? 7 soft phones. Now soft phone means software application that acts as a phone, right? Soft phone uses your internet connection to make and receive calls. The web phone is technically a kind of soft phone. It's just a more specialized version. That's why they're separated out. but this can be anything from the VirtualPBX soft phone application, or you can be using it for a soft phone application from, say, Counterpath. This would also reflect if you're using a soft phone credential to program a VoIP phone, a physical phone. And that would be for a phone that's actually not supported by Dash. Then we have SIP phone. Right. This is a physical VoIP phone, sits on a desk. This does mean it's auto-provisioned, meaning it's supported by Dash. And then a landline, which is pretty self-explanatory. Down here, you notice I have unregistered devices of 11. That means Dash does not have connection with 11 of the VoIP devices, right? So it can't send calls to those devices. That can be something as simple as someone not logged into their soft phone, right? Or a VoIP phone not plugged in, or someone having a network issue of some type, with like a setting problem, or their ISP is having a problem. Total numbers, these are the phone numbers on your account, right? So these are numbers that your customers call to get to your system. Now, your plan includes anywhere from, I believe, 1 to 15 phone numbers as part of your plan price, right? So if your plan includes 15 phone numbers, then you get up to 15 phone numbers, and you're not getting any additional charges based on your phone numbers. Now, once you go over that, then you'll be charged anywhere from $1.99 to $4.99 per month per extra phone number. Right, that's going to vary by plan. Down here, we've got a breakdown first of assigned numbers and spare numbers. So an assigned number means you're using it. It goes someplace, right? Someone can dial that number and expect to either speak to someone, leave a voicemail, or they're getting to a conference room or a fax box, right? And it has some functionality going for it. Spare number means it's a number, but you're not using it right now, right? It's a number that you had for a special promotion, that promotion's over, or you had you bought a block of numbers in sequence, and you just haven't got to those last couple numbers yet. But even if a number is listed as spare and that puts you over your allotment for phone numbers, you would be charged for those additional phone numbers. The next breakdown here we have is USDID and US toll-free. The US toll-free should be US-Canada toll-free, because it does include Canada. But toll-free, 800 number, right? All the way down, 888, all the way down to 833 currently. USDID, that just means a US local phone number, right? So a number in San Jose, California, versus, say, a number in Dallas, Texas, or Miami, Florida, etc. You can't have international phone numbers on your account. If you're interested in adding them, you're going to want to email our porting team. That's PORTING @virtualpbx.com. And they'll need to know the city and country that you want a phone number in. They'll let you know if there's additional requirements. Right? Some countries want proof of presence, i.e. like a utility bill in that city that you want a phone number in. Others just don't care. Next up, we've got conference bridges. This means I have enabled conferencing on 4 of my users. Right, so it's a user feature that's been enabled. Over here on the right, we've got our main numbers. So all these numbers, they go to the same location, they behave the same way, they'll have the same main greeting, for example. Right, your conference number, this is the phone number everyone dials to get to the conference, whether they're on your account or they're external to your account. The fax box number, adding a fax box number will enable faxing on your account. All right, this phone number then becomes your inbound fax number. And then you can also send faxes out, via email. To do that, you create a new email. In the to field, you put the plus sign, the number 1, area code, and then phone number you're faxing to, the @ symbol, and then this piece of information right here, your account realm. Then in that email, you just attach a PDF or TIFF and click send. You don't type in the body of the email. The system basically gets the email, looks at that phone number, says, okay, this is where I'm sending it to, sees the account realm, like, okay, this is where it's coming from, and then grabs attachment and transmits that over the fax line. Right? It doesn't look at anything within the email body of the email itself. Company directory, this is the download link. It's a text file. It shows your users with their extension numbers. The soft phone directory, if you download this is actually for use with the VirtualPBX desktop soft phone application. So you download this file, you then upload it to your desktop soft phone app, and then you'll be able to see the status of your staff members that are using the soft phone. So like right now I can look and see, oh, coworker Bob, he's available. I can go ahead and give him a call, talk to him about our mutual customer that we've been helping, right? Versus, coworker Mike, he's on a call right now, so I can't, there's no point in me calling him at this point because he's obviously busy. The account realm, it's also beyond using for faxing out. You would also use it to program that third-party soft phone application or device. It's one of the 3 key pieces of information. All right, up here at the top, we got caller ID. Now this pull down should, well, it's not showing here, but would show all your main numbers. Whatever number you select, that becomes your default number for a couple other features on Dash. Now you got the company caller ID name or CNAME. This can be 15 characters, including spaces and special characters. After you click on Save Changes, that gets transmitted out to the other carriers who support CNAME. It takes about 3 business days for all of them to get updated. And that is essentially the extent that we can control CNAME, right? We say, hey, here's what it is. Please update your servers. And then when you pick up a VoIP phone and make a call, right, that will be transmitted out. Now, the other part of CNAME is the delivery aspect, and that's handled by the carrier of the device you're calling, right? Now, any carrier in between us and that device, if they don't support CNAME, your CNAME's not going to show up. But ultimately, that last carrier has the ultimate control about what shows up on their phone's displays. And then down here, we've got the company emergency information, or E911. You want to put an accurate address that's associated with this phone number. And every phone number can have its own separate E911, so that way you can assign the appropriate E911 location to all your VoIP devices. And then any changes you make, you click on Save Changes. All right, hold music. So this would be the account level hold music. You can upload your own file. This can be a .wav, .wav, or .mp3 file. We do recommend you record in mono and that the file size stays under 1 megabyte. A 1 megabyte MP3 is roughly 5 minutes. Now, hold music on Dash, the system defines it as after a call has come to one of your users and that user has pressed hold on their VoIP phone. And that's when this file will play. All right, main number is actually hours is part of main number. So let's just go over to main number. And the main number page typically takes longer to load than the other pages, just because there's a lot of information to go through. First up, main company numbers. These show all your main numbers. You can add numbers either from your spare number list, right? So I can add either of these 2 phone numbers if I'm so inclined, or I can buy a number, right? So I can buy a local or toll-free. Local. Alright, you just need to enter in an area code. So we'll try 650. And then you'll see a list of phone numbers. Click add, and it adds it to your cart. You can add multiple if you want. You can decide to remove it. And then down here at the bottom, you would click buy. And this is just adding that number to your account. Now, like if you have no numbers on your account, buying, it will not add a line item to your invoice or charge you for it. Likewise, as long as you're under your allotment, there'll be no additional charge for adding a number to your account, right? Now, once you've added numbers to the account, you can click on the little gear icon next to any of these phone numbers, and you can update the caller ID, right? So you can adjust the outbound CNAME if you want, You can turn on allowing inbound CNAM. You've got the E911, so you can put a different address for each of the phone numbers. Prepend is a VoIP phone feature. This allows you to put text in front of the caller ID that shows up on your VoIP phone's displays, right? So if this number is on for a particular promo, right, I can type in promo, I click Save Changes. Now that word will show up on all my staff members' VoIP phones if a call comes in on this particular phone number, saying it's promo, and then give the phone number of the person calling in. Messaging. If your plan supports business SMS, then you can turn the messaging on. On your main numbers, messaging does require your account have Zapier integration or webhooks. If you're interested in that or you're not sure, you're going to want to talk to our account services team. They can verify if your plan has it or not. You can also see what we do with webhooks via developer.virtualpbx.com. Now, if you no longer want to use a number as a main number, right, you would just click unassign it next to that number. Now, that didn't remove the number from your account. It just moved it into the spare numbers. But then you can, once you unassign a number, you can then use it someplace else, or you can get rid of it later, which we'll get to when we get to numbers. Next up, we have office hours strategy. Excuse me, having some trouble talking today. If you just signed up, your system's in 24-hour open office. Many customers choose to go custom office hours by changing the little button there. And then for each day of the week that they're open, they put a check mark in front of that day. And then in these boxes to the right, they enter their open hours in 24-hour or military time. You also have an option at the very bottom to say you're closed for lunch. So that means your whole facility closes down for lunch. You would put a check mark in front of that, and again, enter your lunch hours in 24-hour or military time. And then click on Save Changes. Office holidays, if you're closed for holidays, you put a check mark up here to the left. And then over on the right, you click on Add Holiday, and then you have your options for single day, date range, or advanced. Single day, each one of those would create a new row. So single day is like we have here for President's Day. You give it a name, you select the month and the day. Right. Date range is like we have here for Christmas. Again, give it a name, give it a start date and an end date. The caveat here for date range is that there's no year indicator. So you do want to avoid having a date range that includes New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And then for an example for advanced, you have this retreat here where I'm saying the first Friday in July, we're closed, right? So you select the month, 1st through 4th, as well as last, and then day of the week. Right? And then in changes, you click on Save Changes. All right, incoming call handling. So again, this is for all your main numbers. You have open hours, you have the sub-tab for after hours, and then for holidays. Right, they all have the same basic options. So open hours calls come in, and I'm sending them to the virtual receptionist. This is a link, so you can click on it. And now I see my virtual receptionist options. On the left is your main menu. This is what people press on their phone to navigate through your system. Right, so you can click on Add Route. You have default, star, and then 0 through 9 to choose from, and then where you're sending it to. And if you click up here, right, the Smart Directory, dial by name directory, right? So people can type in the name. Users, you can send it to a specific person. Call queue, you can send it to one of your ACD queues. Devices, so you can send it to a specific phone if you're so inclined. We don't generally recommend that just because if that phone doesn't have voicemail, then the call would simply end, and that might not be a great experience for your caller. Media means you can have a greeting file play. Similar to the device is once that media file is done, right, gets to the end of the file, the call simply ends. So not always a great experience for your customer. Groups, these are departments. Groups and queues are related, and I'll get into that a little bit later. Advanced call flows, this is if you want to make use of submenuing, right? So like if you had in your greeting, you say, press 1 for English, 2 for Spanish, you would have, one, you could then have menu option 1 go to a different menu, right? Menu option 2 goes to a second submenu where you have different greeting play and new menu options. And then you have voicemail boxes, right? So people can leave a message. Greetings over here on the right, you've got your text to speech. You just simply type in what you want to say, click update, and then save and save changes. Now, one thing to keep in mind about couple things to keep in mind about the text to speech greeting. One, there's a character limit of 250 to 350 characters, and it apparently, I haven't tested this fully, but if you make it very complicated, it decreases the character count. The other thing to keep in mind is when you click update, even if you change a word, right, the file name stays the same, right? So you'll have multiple copies of, it's called a main open hours menu TTS is what it calls it by default. So if I just change a word here, I click update, then I'll have a second file, right? If I add another sentence here and I click update, there's a third file, all with the same name. So that's something to be aware of. And we'll talk about how to manage that in just a little bit. Upload your own file. Right, choose the file, .wav, .mp3. We do recommend you record in mono. And then you would click update, save, and then save changes over here. Choose from your existing recordings. This is a pull down so you can see your various files that you already have on the system. And then you would select update and then save changes. Record it over the phone. So by default, the system wants you to pick up a registered phone. What that means is a VoIP phone that you auto provisioned on the account. Right. Then you call in to your main number, and then you enter this PIN number. This PIN number is specific to this time of day. Right. So this is my open hours. So I can only use this PIN number during my open hours, meaning I can only change my main greeting over the phone during my open hours. Now, if you don't have a VoIP phone on the account, right, or you've got that friend who's got that great radio voice that you want to use or they've agreed to, then down here under settings, you want to turn on allow outside recording, right? When this is on, now you can use a cell phone or landline to call in, right? You still need the PIN number, and then they can call in and record over the phone. One caveat about recording over the phone is that when you do so, it overwrites the file that you have in place, right? So if you have greeting A is your current main greeting, you call in, you enter in the PIN number, and you start recording, right? Greeting file A, that file name stays the same, but the content will be completely different. So if you wanted to use the original greeting file A again, right, you need to not have it be your default file when you call in to record over the phone. Right. Professional recording services. When you click order, this will take you to another site hosted by Snap Recordings, who we've partnered with. You can choose anywhere between it's 80 to 100 voice actors and actresses to choose from. They have varying versions of English, French, and Spanish, which means you can also do multilingual greetings. They also have what they refer to as hold treatment, which would be a music file and a script alternating. They do their own pricing and billing via credit card typically. They email you the file when it's completed, and then you would simply come back and upload your own file. Right. Settings. So number of retries on misdial. You want something between 0 and 10. Most people I recommend 1 or 2. But what this is how many times that inbound caller can make an invalid entry. Right? So I call in, I press 5, which I don't currently have set up. Right? The system says, okay, well, that's it, and it would send you to the default route in this particular case. right? If this was 2, then I can hit 5, right? The greeting would then repeat. And then let's say I hit 7, right? The greeting would repeat again. And then that last time I'm like, oh, I actually meant 3, right? And then it will let me go to that menu option 3, which is a voicemail. Now, next up, we've got the dialing timeout. This should actually be a full number, not a decimal. Normally I say 1 or 2 for most customers. This is how much time the system waits after it hears a button press before it assumes you're done, right? So I call in, I press 5, and if this was set to 1, the system waits for 1 second, right, to see if I hit another number. It says, oh no, you meant 5, and then that's not a valid entry, gives me that invalid entry error, right? I said, oh, whoops, wrong option. I hit 4, it waits that 1 second, make sure I'm not hitting, 4111 or something like that. It says, nope, just 4. Okay, I'm gonna send it to this call flow, right? This queue. Okay, covered outside recording. Allow extension dialing with this. If I turn this on, that means when someone gets to my virtual receptionist, right? They hear the greeting, they can enter an extension number, 101, and the system will recognize that. Go, okay, I'm sending to extension 101, right? If you turn this off, that means your inbound callers can only press your menu options or get to the default route if they keep messing up. So any changes on your main menu, your greetings, or your settings, you would click on Save. And then make sure when you get back to the incoming call handling page, you click Save Changes. All right. Next option here, this is the live operator option. Basically what it is, call comes in, I'm offering it to Aaron. If he's not able to pick up, then the call goes to the virtual receptionist. Right, this is my open hours, so this virtual receptionist would be the same as we were just looking at. Right, same menu options, and greetings, etc. Right, and then here's this pull down, right? So you can select whatever user, so you can change users as needed, right? You can send it to a call queue, right, which would be typically be multiple staff members. Right, you can send it to a specific phone, a media file, which I would think would be confusing because basically you would have the media file play here, and then again you would have a media file play when you get to the virtual receptionist. So that might be a little confusing for your customers. You can send it to a group, right? So you have another group of people answering, or a call queue. But the idea here is that you're giving staff members a chance to answer the call initially. If they're not able to, then the inbound caller gets sent to the virtual receptionist, where they can hit menu options to try to speak to someone or leave a voicemail. Number 3, one thing I should mention for both options 2 and 3, when we're sending the call to a group, user, etc., the system is only sending it for 20 seconds. Then after that, it will either go to the virtual receptionist, or in this case, go to the voicemail box. Right, so third option here, again, same options, right? You can send it to users, you can send it to groups, you can send it to queues, devices, media file, etc. With one addition, way down here at the bottom, you have skip to voicemail, right? So your call comes in, it goes right to this voicemail box. But typically, and so this scenario I typically see on customers on their holiday mode, right? They choose this, okay, we're closed, just send it to a voicemail, right? But still you could do, send it to, say, a group where for 20 seconds it tries to read the members of the group. If they're not able to answer it, goes to voicemail. Last option here is going to my secondary attendant and hit those menu options. Typically not recommended, because if you're, at least for the long term, right? If temporarily, it makes sense, but if the sample A attendant is going to be your main attendant, you should make that your main number virtual receptionist, and then whatever you have for your typical main number should be the secondary attendant. For your after hours and holidays, right, you have these same options. Just keep in mind the virtual reception receptionist, for each is different, right? Unique to each one. So you would have a different greeting play. You would have different menu options. Main conference number. You can have multiple conference numbers if you want, so you can add from spare or by numbers. You also have the option here for a custom text-to-speech greeting. So if you turn this on, you would type in what you want the system to say, and then you would click on save. Now, even if you don't have anything here, when you call in, the system says welcome to the conference. It will prompt you to enter the conference room number and then the PIN number. Main fax box number. You can only have the one fax box number by default. On your account, when you click Edit Fax Box, you'll have two fields show up in the box. The first is for incoming notifications. Right, so you put an email address there, and whenever an inbound fax comes in, that email address will get notified that a fax came in, and there'll be a PDF attachment in that email. So that way that person or people can then double click on the attachment and view the PDF. One thing to keep in mind is that if someone dials your fax box number, right, here's that fax tone, it hangs up because they didn't mean to dial a fax number. That inbound notification email address will get an email saying, hey, there was a failed inbound fax attempt. Hopefully you can always try to call the number and make sure it was someone trying to fax you or not, etc. Again, when you edit the fax box, the second field is for the outbound permissions. So you put your company domain in that field. Then anyone at your company, right, can then send an email out or send a fax out from their email address, right? They need that format, the +1, area code, phone number, @ your account realm, and then simply attach a PDF or TIFF file. When you include your company domain as the outbound permissions, anyone can fax out, right? They don't have to be a dash user. So like your intern can be sending out faxes for you without actually you adding a user to your account. All right, auto attendance. Now this is a plan-specific feature. So if this ends up being something you're interested in, you're going to want to talk to our account services team. There are a couple use cases, or the most common uses for this are, one, if you have multiple businesses on the same account, right? You want each business to have their own phone number and their own main greeting, but your staff handles calls for these multiple businesses, right? Calls can be going to the same staff members. They just have different greetings, different phone numbers. The other use case I already mentioned for the sample A was for submenuing, right? So calls come into your main number. You say press 1 for English, 2 for Spanish. Then under auto attendance, you would create an English and a Spanish attendant, create a greeting in English and a greeting for Spanish, respectively. And then for the menu options for each, right, they would go to either English-speaking staff members or Spanish-speaking staff members. Right, creating attendant, you would click up here at the top, and you give it a name, and then you enter an extension number, and then you click on Create Attendant. Once you have created an attendant, you can click on the name, and you have this option here, Unavailable in Main Menu. If you click on that, now it's available in Main Menu, meaning that it can be a submenu, right? So if you leave it unavailable, that means it's a standalone, right? So it's a secondary business. Over here, you can add a phone number or multiple phone numbers to an account or to an attendant. You can also unassign a phone number. Just make sure you click Save Changes after doing so. Extensions, you can have multiple extensions for your attendants. This is mostly for your staff members. They can literally transfer a call to one of these attendants just via the extension number, or even by the phone number. And then you can click on the little wrench icon under Settings. And then you see here we do have these sub tabs for open hours, after hours, and holidays, right? These times match what we just set up under main number, right? So if your secondary businesses, or I don't know if they're secondary, but your other businesses have different hours of operation, then you either need to have custom work done on your account, which you'd want to talk to our account services team about, or look to having separate accounts for them. Right. But in terms of that, virtual receptionist, right, you can add a route just like we did under the main number. You can select your greeting and you have your settings here. Right, just like we just covered under the main number incoming call handling. Right, devices shows all your devices on the account. Green means it's registered, meaning we can send a call to that device. Red means it's not registered, meaning we can't send a call to that device. And black means you've disabled it. Now you can add devices here. All right, SIP phone. This is that physical white phone. It sits on a desk. These are the manufacturers that support auto provisioning. You can click on them to see the models that are supported. And then down here, so let's say we're using the Cisco 525G. You give them the device name, so like Bob's phone, and then you enter the MAC address. The MAC address is unique to each phone. It is typically on the back of the phone on a sticker, or if the phone is powered on, typically under menu status, one of the things is the MAC address, and then you would enter that information here. And then you would click on Create Device, and then you would assign it to a user. And as far as the dashboard is concerned, you're done. Right? Now, within the phone, you need to access the phone's web user interface, the web UI. You need to enter in a URL. Basically, you're telling the phone under its auto provision tab, hey, go to this address and get your config file. Right? It will do so. It will reboot a couple of times, typically, and then it will show up as a green device on your device's page. For the specifics of that URL and where to go to our go to virtualpbx.com, mouse over support, select dash support. On the right hand side, about a third of the way down, you're looking for a document called auto provisioning phones. You click on that, it's going to have screenshots for these various manufacturers and the specific URL, and I think in some cases like additional settings that might need to be adjusted, or you just want to match up to what's displayed, and then you'll be all set. Next up, cell phone and landline are essentially the same, right? You give it a name, and then you put +1 area code and phone number, and then you click on Create Device. So when Dash sends a call to a cell phone or landline, right? And let me get to advanced. So this is the default settings for a cell phone or a landline. So Dash is sending a call to your cell phone, right? Your phone rings, you pick up, you will hear, this is a forwarded call. Please press 1. When you're pressing 1, you're telling the system, yes, you're there, and yes, you want to take this call. Right? Here's the 1, connects call to, you speak to the customer. Now, if you're, instead of actually sending it to your cell phone, you're actually sending it to an answering service, right? An automated answering service for, let's say, your after hours. What you would want to do is turn this, or click here, right? Allow use of cell phone's voicemail. What that does is you no longer have to press 1 to accept the call, right? Your automated answering service can't do that. So now we send the call to that phone number, we hear that pickup tone, the system connects the call, right? So great if you're sending it to an automated answering service, because then they can take over the call, not a problem. If it's actually going to your cell phone, right? That means if your cell phone voicemail picks up, we still treat that like a connected call, meaning your inbound caller can end up on your cell phone's voicemail box versus the Dash voicemail box. Some people want that, some people don't. It's just something to be aware of. The other thing some people change is this one here. They keep original caller ID. So call comes in, say customer Mary, giving you a, calling your system, gets to your extension, it's showing up on your cell phone, and you see Mary's phone number, you don't recognize it. You're like, I am so tired of these car warranty people calling me all the freaking time. I'm letting it go to voicemail. I'll call this person back later. Now, what you can do is uncheck this, right? So now when customer Mary calls you, it's not her phone number that shows up on your account. It's your main company phone number that shows up on your cell phone. All right, so we'll go back to the dashboard real quick, or at least as quick as it will load. And then under caller ID, this is the phone number that would show up on your cell phone instead. Right, so it lets you know, oh, this is a business call. Hopefully it's legit, so then you can answer it and make some money. Soft phone, you can add a soft phone. The first thing here is this warning basically saying about wireless VoIP technology. Dialing 911 from a soft phone may not be advisable because you may not be at your physical location that you're normally at. And then here is the setup for a third-party soft phone. You would give it a name, and then you'd want to copy and paste the SIP username here. If you click on the SIP password box, it will reveal the password, so you would want to copy and paste that. And then the account realm, right? And then you create the device. You would want to assign it to a user as well. But you would use those three pieces of information, right? The SIP password, the SIP username, the SIP password, the account realm, to program that third-party soft phone, whether it's something from Counterpath, whether it's a VoIP phone that didn't show up under that SIP phone list, etc. And you can set up the web phone here. I usually recommend setting it up on the user's page. But essentially you give it a name, you create device, but at some point you need to assign it to the user. The web phone uses your dash login information to log into webphone.virtualpbx.net, so it does need to be associated with a user. Alright, your greetings tab or manager. So this will show all the greetings on the account. You can add a greeting up here at the top. Essentially, you would be uploading a .wav or .mp3 file recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. Right, and then you would click on create greeting. But the main thing that people would use this for is to manage their greetings. You can see them listed here. The source TTS, that means it's a text to speech. This came from your virtual receptionist, right? How I said that anytime you make an adjustment to your text to speech greeting, it will save a file name with the main open hours TTS. Right, you can download it to listen to it to see if it's relevant or if it's the correct one. Right, you see I have another main open hours down here as well. You can click on the little wrench icon next to a greeting so you can change the name or delete it. Now, so for this main open hours TTS greetings, I would want to listen to them, see which one is relevant, delete the ones that are not, and honestly I would recommend changing the name of the one that stays so it's unique, so that way in case you ever go in and make an adjustment, right, you won't have two main open hours menu TTS files. You would have the original one and then your new one that you created. All right, groups, short for ring groups. These are departments. You click on add group. You give it a name and an extension number. And then you click and drag your staff members that you want to be in the group. And then you click on create group. Once a group's created, you can click on its name. Right, you can always change the name. And then you have the group call attempts. What this is how many times the inbound caller will be offered to your staff members. Little arrows here to the right, so you can increase or decrease that as necessary. And then click Save Changes if you make any changes. Next up, you have the Members box. Click on that. This will show you the staff members that are in this group. Looks like I removed someone from the account here, so I'll remove them. Now up here on the top, these are timestamps. And up here, this last one is your overall ring duration. Right? Default for a new group is 120 seconds. And then I will click distribute. And so now I'm having the system ring my staff members in order. Oops, looks like I removed 2 people. Let's redistribute. So now it's equalized out over time. Now these are sliders, so I can adjust these. And in fact, I can do something like this. I can set up for what's called blast ringing or ring all. Now, one thing to keep in mind for groups is when a call comes in, right? In this scenario, everyone's phones ring. Say Duke picks up the call, right? So he's helping that customer. A second call comes in. Duke will hear call waiting beep in his ear. The customer won't, but he will. Up until, Jan, Kathy, or David answer that second call. Right. Now, if I want to change the order, right? Let's say Duke has a project that he's working on, so I don't want him taking that, too many calls. I can move him down to the bottom by just clicking and dragging, and then I can click distribute again. So now he's last in line. Right? Then we'll say, oh, okay, he's done with that project, like a week or 2, whatever. And then say Kat here has a project that she needs to work on. I can click redistribute. Groups can't have extension numbers, and they can have multiple. Again, this is usually for your staff to transfer calls to, but again, if your inbound callers know the extension number, they can enter that from your virtual receptionist. Now, groups can also have their own phone numbers if you want them to. The one thing to keep in mind about that is that when your group does have its own phone number, right, this phone number supersedes or doesn't pay attention to your open hours, right? So someone can call this number, the 669 number, at 2 in the morning, and it's going to ring through to the staff members in this group. Now, if you're just using VoIP phones, not a big deal, right? Most people don't carry their VoIP phones when they're done for the day. It might be an issue if they're working from home right now, and then their VoIP phone might ring in the middle of the night. Typically, the thing with groups though is that you can also send calls to cell phones and landlines. So having a call ring to your staff member's personal cell phone at 2 in the morning might be more problematic. So that's something you might want to be aware of and not necessarily have a phone number associated directly with a group, and just have it go through a menu option on your virtual receptionist, so that way it will follow your hours of operation. Group features. Right, first up is ringback. This is essentially hold music that will play until one of your staff member picks up. So you would upload a file, .wav.mp3 recorded in mono under 1 megabyte, and then you would click on Save Changes. The main thing to remember about the ringback file is that the system's not going to loop it for you. So you want to make sure that that file, right, the duration of that file matches your ring duration or exceeds it. Next action, this is if no one picks up, what do you want the system to do? In this case, I'm sending it to a voicemail box, but this is a pull down. So you can send it back to your main menu. All right. You can send it to one of your additional attendants. You can send it to a call queue. You can send it to a specific phone, a media file. You can send it to a group, and you can send it to a user. As well as a voicemail box. Allow call forward. If you enable this, your users can then make use of call forwarding. Basically, they can send calls to their backup device, right? Like, oh, I'm going to be on the road today, but I still want to be able to take these calls. send it to my cell phone instead of my my normal desk phone. Caller ID prepend, again, a VoIP phone feature where you can add either text or numbers in front of the caller ID, and that will show up on your staff members' VoIP phones. Right, so it gives them a heads up about what kind of call they're getting. Right, especially if you have staff members in multiple groups or queues. All right, numbers shows your numbers on the account and where they're going. Or who they're going to. Again, here you can that little gear icon, so you can add the caller ID, E911, prepend, etc. Spare numbers, these are the numbers you're not using for whatever reasons. If you don't want, if you're over your account allotment, right, and you want to reduce your bill, then what you want to do is, well, while I'm doing it, keep an eye up here where it says numbers and buy. Right, but you want to put a check mark here in front of the number or numbers you no longer want to keep. All right, now I've got this option for delete. So now I can delete these two numbers. It says you've successfully deleted them, and now they're removed from my account. So now I just saved money on my bill. Right, you always have the option to buy numbers, right, local or toll free. Right, toll free, you can choose the prefix, click search, and then again, basic same process as before, where you add the number and then you would click on buy. In this case, it would just add the numbers to my spare number use or spare number list, excuse me. Whereas before under main numbers, I was adding it directly to the main number. Right? If we go back to groups real quick, right, how I said they can have their own number. Right, so I can add from spare or I can buy numbers here, and it would add it directly to this group. The other thing here you see is port. So port is an industry term meaning move a phone number from one carrier to another. You give it port a name, you choose either US local or toll free, you would click next, and now it's going to ask you to upload a PDF, basically a copy of your bill. And then in the following pages, it will give you an option to download a blank letter of agency, or LOA, and then to upload a completed and signed LOA. Gives you a few checkboxes to mark off to say that you understand what's happening and what not to do. And then you submit those documents. You'll get an automated email saying, "Hey, you've submitted your port request." Typically, by the next business day, you should get a second email from our porting team saying, "Yes, we did get your porting documents. Here's what to expect in the porting process." That lets you know that the port has officially been submitted and it's in process, that second email. If for some reason you get an error when you're trying to submit the documents, or upload, or you didn't get that second email, just email our porting team at virtualpbx.com. You can ask if we got your initial port submission, or you can just simply send us the documents. Either way, we can process the port via that email. You don't have to do it through this portal. The LOA, right? It's going to ask you for company information, right? The business name, the address, and a signature, right? And who's authorizing it. That information should match what your current carrier has on file. So, for instance, let's say you're moving a phone number from Comcast to VirtualPBX, right? Whatever Comcast has on file for that phone number is what should be on the LOA, right? The business name should match, the address they have on file, the service address should match, and then the person signing it, right? The authorized signature, it does need a signature, right? It can be a digital signature, but simply typing the person's name in twice will get it rejected and then delay the port. Now, port requests vary in terms of their timing. Toll-free numbers typically take 3 to 5 business days, give or take, assuming everything is correct. Local numbers have a wider variance. Like a Google Voice number, we've seen port over in a business day, but typically you're talking 2 to 3 weeks for most local phone numbers. And again, that's assuming no errors. if we do get a rejection notice, we get a relatively, well, not quite generic, but it's not a lot of detail, right? They'll tell us address mismatch or unauthorized user, right? Or authorized user mismatch, meaning the person who signed it isn't actually the authorized person that's on file with the current carrier, right? We're not told, oh, you had the wrong, 2 digits wrong in the street address, or you misspelled, someone had a typo in the company name, right? We just get told this piece of information is incorrect, right? So that's what we will send to you, saying this is the error we got, which means at that point you're going to want to double check with your carrier to what they actually have on file. Now, we do typically double check to make sure there wasn't an error in entry on our side, like we didn't, do a typo. In that case, we would just correct the information and resubmit, and you wouldn't know that we had to do that necessarily. All right. Next up is users. Right? This will show all the users on the account. The little blue person icon means they're an admin, whereas the gray person icon means they're a standard user. Clicking up here at top, add a user. You need to enter their name. The email address used for login needs to be unique for each user, right? So I couldn't reuse support@virtualpbx.com for all my support staff. I could use support 1, 2, and 3, even if they're not legit email addresses, because they would use that just for login. Now, one thing to keep in mind about that email address used for login, that's also the default email that we send voicemails to, for example, or your password reset. So ideally you want it to be a legit email address, but not everyone will want to do that. We get that. Password, as an admin, you're going to create the password for your users. And then the main extension number. Now on this system, I started off with extension 1000. So it's the system is telling me the next available one is 1012. I can change this, right? I can make it 7210. Because, this is I have a new business, right, for a new auto attendant. So I want the staff members who are responsible for that to have 7000 series extension numbers. Check mark here for create the voicemail box for the user. That's intrinsically tied to the user. So once I create this user, for example, and I add a VoIP phone to them, they can pick up their VoIP phone, hit *98 on that VoIP phone. That will take them directly to this voicemail box I just created. The system will then prompt them to create a PIN number for that voicemail box, as well as to record their voicemail greeting. And we got include in the company directory. A check mark means yes. You can always change your mind later. Send emails to an alternate address. This would supersede the login address, right? So let's say I had to use support7@virtualpbx.com for this new user, but I want their password resets and or any voicemail messages to go to their personal email address or to the manager. All right. And then send credentials to the user, which I think is pretty important. It gives them their email address. If you're only creating the one user, you click on create user. If you have to add more, you do create user and add another. All right. Once a user is created, you can click on their name. You can change their name. All right. You can also change their credentials. Oops, I forgot something here. Right, so you can change their email address, you can change their password. You also have the option here to send the password reset email to them directly if for some reason they can't get to the website. Change PIN, you can change their voicemail box PIN temporarily. Then here's your option to send emails to an alternate address, as well as include in the company directory. Over here on the right, this is a pull down. So you can make an admin into a user or a user into an admin. And then we've got the time zone. Sorry. So, you have users in different parts of the world. You can select the appropriate time zone for them, which is helpful for the timestamps or voicemail, for example. This is the default language. And that's just what the web pages are going to display as. Ringing timeout is measured in seconds. This is how much time Dash is going to try to reach the devices on the user. So the default is 20 seconds, which is typically plenty of time for a landline or a VoIP phone. If your user is predominantly using their cell phone, then you're going to want to increase this to 45 or 60 seconds. It simply takes longer to route a call to a cell phone than it does, say, to a landline. In terms of how a PBX system in general works, right? Call comes in, we're routing it to the user. Then, depending on the device of the user, let's say call is going to a landline, we send it to that landline telecom company. They say, oh, we know exactly where that is. Boom, sends the call right away. Whereas, that same user, let's say instead they switched over to their cell phone, we send the call out to the cell phone carrier. They say, give us a second, we need to find them first, right? They ping cell phone towers, they find her now, send the call, right? It's that delay in terms of trying to find you is why you need more ring time on the PBX side of sending a call. And then here you've got which extension of theirs is their main. Most users have just a single extension, so that's not a big deal. However, under the extension box, once it loads, right, you can add additional extensions to a user. You would just enter the extension number and then click on Save Changes. Right, users can have their own phone numbers. Right, you can buy a new or add spare. They can have multiple. And again, just like I mentioned under groups, right, this phone number will always work, right? So it won't go directly to voicemail if they're calling after hours. So for people just using VoIP phones, probably not a huge deal. But for people who's using their cell phones, that might be a bigger issue. User features, caller ID number. You can turn this on for users that have their own phone number. And what you're doing here is saying that when they make an outbound call, it's this their personal phone number shows up as the caller ID, not the main company number. Right. Call forwarding. You have off, on, and failover mode. Now, between turning it off and on, your users can actually control that themselves via the user portal or from their VoIP phones. There's a set of feature codes that allows them to enable or update their call forwarding directly from the VoIP phone. But user portal, it's going to look similar to this, where they can turn it on, and then they enter +1 area code and phone number that they're going to forward to, and then they would click on Save Changes. Right, so basically they're saying, hey, I'm not going to be at my normal phone, send it to this other phone number instead. Now, this other phone number should not already be a device on the user, right? This is something they use sporadically versus every day. Now, failover mode, this is for your VoIP phone users, right? Because since the system can detect if a VoIP phone becomes unregistered or not, failover mode basically says, okay, system detects the VoIP phone went offline, right? Became unregistered, and a call happens to come into the user at that time, the system will automatically send it to their forwarded phone number. Hot desking is a VoIP feature as well. And when you click enable, you give each of your staff members a hot desk ID. I usually say, especially if you're using 4-digit extensions, just make it their extension number. It's easier. But this is for where you have people in a shared office environment where they might be at a different desk from day to day, right? So like these days, some people might be only coming in the office once or twice a week. Well, you don't necessarily need a dedicated desk/phone for them if they're only there, that infrequently. So, it's Tuesday. I come into the office. Desk number 7 is open. I sit down. I pick up that VoIP phone. I hit *11. That turns on hot desking on that phone. It then asks me for the hot desk ID number. If the check mark for a PIN number is enabled, then it'll ask me for the PIN. And then it'll tell me calls will now come to this device, meaning any calls to my user will come to the phone I'm sitting at, right? End of my day, I pick up the phone, I hit *12. That way my calls don't keep coming to the phone after I leave, right? Now let's say the next time I come into the office, it's a Friday, right? I have like project I need to get done that I can only do at the office for whatever reasons. I come in and desk number 1's open. I'm like, oh, I never get to sit at desk number 1. All right. Sit down, I hit *11 on that phone, I hit the hot desk ID, and again, calls that come to me will ring to the phone that I'm sitting at. Voicemail box, again, this was enabled because we created the voicemail box for the user. If you have transcription available, transcribing voicemails into text is a plan specific feature as far as I remember. You might double check with account services on that. But by default, voicemail to email is enabled, and what that means is we're attaching a voicemail to the email message, meaning it's an MP3 file. Right, so you get an email, you can click on the double click on the MP3 file and listen to it right on your computer. Now, one thing to keep in mind, voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages. After that, if someone tries to leave a message, they'll be given a message saying, mailbox is full, please try again later. Right? A little bit frustrating for the inbound caller. So you have the option here to delete after that email is sent out from the database. So call comes in, leaves a voicemail. Then the system emails your user, right, saying, hey, you got a voicemail. There's an attachment so they can listen to it, and then the system deletes that voicemail from the voicemail box, so that way that voicemail box never gets full. And then click on Save Changes. Fax box, your users can have their own individual fax box if you want them to. You would just click on Enable, and then you can select a spare number or buy a new number or assign a new extension. Now, in general, I recommend making use of a phone number. It's generally easier all around for everyone involved. If you choose to assign a new extension, right, you need to find an extension that's not being used. So like 399 looks like is available. And then you click on Select Extension. And then you would click on Save Changes. Now, at this point, when someone tries to fax this user, right, so the person faxing has to dial my main number. Right, then they enter 399, and then they hit Send Fax. Now, on a physical fax machine, that might be easier, right, because they might have that handset so they can listen in and know when to hit 399. Some fax machines, you can enter an additional key strikes in between the phone number and the extension number to give it a pause, so then it knows to wait and then send 399 through, and then you click on Send Fax. Right, but that's relying on that person faxing to know all of this and be able to follow that procedure and have the equipment to do that. The other issue is there's a lot of electronic fax services out there, and not all of them allow for faxing to an extension. So that's why I typically say just select the phone number, and people just enter the phone number, hit Send Fax, and they're done. Conference Bridge. You can enable conferencing on a user once you have a conference number assigned, right? And then the only thing an admin has to do is create a PIN number, and then you click on Save Changes. The PIN number, the user can change that themselves later via the user portal, which we'll be getting to a little bit later. Follow Me works best with a user with multiple devices, so we will go here. So first you enable it, and then you see you have to decide which devices you're actually going to ring to. So you uncheck them both in this example. Up here is the total ring time, which defaults to 120 seconds. It's just like groups, right? I can click distribute, so now it's ringing between these two devices. Or I can flip it and then click distribute again. Again, these are sliders, so I can have it ring the entire time. And then click on Save Changes. Right, obviously you have more devices, you can have a longer list there. Music on hold, you can have your users have their own hold music. Right, you would just click enable, and then you upload a .wav.mp3 recorded in mono file, and then you would click on Save Changes. So now whenever this user presses hold on their VoIP phone, their specific hold music file plays. Customize call recording. So when you first enable it, it looks like this, right? Basically saying, okay, what kind of calls do you want to record? Right? Inbound internal means coworker Bob called me, right? Whereas inbound external means customer Mary called me, right? Outbound internal means I called Bob back, right? My coworker Bob, and then outbound external means I called customer Mary back to give her an update on her order. Right, and then I click on Save Changes. The recordings, right? Those are stored at recordings.virtualpbx.com, and you can listen to and download them there. And then you have the option to put a user on Do Not Disturb. Right, voicemail boxes. So users, right, will typically have their name associated to one voicemail box because it was created at the time they were created. If you need to create your own, right, you would click Add Voicemail Box. You give it a name, a voicemail box number, and a PIN number, and you would click on Create a new voicemail box. And then click on a wrench icon here. Right, so you can always change the name, the PIN number, and the voicemail box number if you need to. Under Advanced, so then you have your greeting media. Right, so you can always upload a file to any voicemail box, right, .wav, .mp3, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. The temporary file, this is for like the vacation out of office voicemail greeting, right? So when a temporary file is selected, it supersedes the media file, and then when that person gets back in the office, you would then select temporary back to none. So that way their normal file is playing. Recipients. Now, for your user voicemail boxes, they already have one recipient. For your manually created one, you should add one, so that way there's at least one person who gets notified when a voicemail comes into this voicemail box. But you can also add additional people to your user voicemail boxes if you need to. And then we have the options. So once you have a greeting media file in place and recipients on a manually created voicemail box, go ahead and click on Already Set Up. And then down here, you've got that option for deleting after notification, on also attaching the email or attaching the message to the email. And then click on Save Changes. All right, advanced routing. What we have here is what's called Direct Inward System Access, or DISA. Now, what this does is allows a cell phone or landline user to call into your system and log in, essentially, and then make an outbound call. And when they make that outbound call, it's not their cell phone number that shows up on the outbound caller ID, but your main company number. So first, you would need to enable it, and it's going to automatically generate a PIN number for you. I typically also recommend adding an extension number to it, just because that would be two pieces of information that someone would need to know to be able to access the system versus someone accidentally finding out this information. So now, from your cell phone, you can call into your main number that rings to the virtual receptionist or any of the auto attendants, right? Then you enter in this extension number, right? Then the system's going to prompt you for the PIN number. Right, and then you'll hear dial tone. So then you enter area code and phone number that you're trying to reach, and then you're making an outbound call. Right, and then again, that phone number that shows up on the outbound caller ID, right, is your caller ID phone number here versus my personal cell phone number. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that if you're a new sign up, DISA does not automatically show up as available in your account. This is something you have to request to have enabled. And that's just because if someone is able to figure out your DISA PIN number, right, they could be making outbound calls on your account without you necessarily knowing about it right away, which means they can rack up on your bill, and you may not notice that until you get your next invoice, which by then is much too late. Right, call logs. This shows your call activity on the account. Green arrow to the right means it's an inbound call that came into the system, whereas the left arrow to the yellow left-hand arrow, that's an outbound call. You can click on the calls to get a better idea of what happened on the call. Like these are look like they didn't enter a menu option or they went to a voicemail. Let's see if I can. Well, typically on an actual call, you can, when you click on it, you'll see the devices, oh, here we go, that it rang to. Right, so you can see, oh, call came in. Now, this actually indicates that it's most likely a network error going on. That's why this person wasn't able to pick up on this call on this device. Now, that could just be a network setting issue. It could be an ISP issue, but typically when we see this particular error, we would want to get your network layout to make sure you're not dual NATing, and then double check your router settings. Typically what you should see is this where it says normal clearing. That means a call ended normally. Now you can download these files as a CSV file, so you can view it in a spreadsheet program and view, especially if you have a lot of call logs, you get a better idea of what's going on with your system. Feature codes. I've mentioned a couple of these. So these are essentially dial pad shortcuts to make use of some of the functions of Dash via your VoIP phones. These are also published on our website under the support pages, so you don't have to log in to view them all. And in fact, under that Dash support pages, so there is a feature codes document. There's also a phone commands cheat sheet, which has all of these in a brief description of what they do, just in a single page PDF. All right, and that's the dashboard. So let's go over here to the hamburger menu, and we're going to go over to ACD queues. Now, ACD stands for Automatic Call Distribution. It's a call center feature. These are the standard ACD queues, which are $15 to $30 per month per queue, depending on your plan. We also have ACD Queues Pro, which I believe start at $99, again, depending on the plan. If you're interested in queues, either version, you do want to talk to our account services team, and they can verify the pricing for you and your plan. Now, creating a queue, you just click on Add New Queue. I'm going to click on the little gear icon for an existing queue as we go through it all, just to make it a little easier. So, you give the queue a name, and then you can assign either a phone number or an extension to a queue. Right, it can have one or the other. Groups could have both. Right. One thing to keep in mind about queues is that your users can only make use of VoIP devices on queues currently. Right, so SIP phone, soft phone, or web phone. Right, they're not able to use cell phone or landlines. Next, we've got the configuration. You've got the queue routing strategy, and unfortunately the pull down is not working. Most idle means a call comes in and it will be offered to the staff member who's been waiting for the call the longest. Right. There's ring all, right, ring everybody. Round robin, which will equalize out over time. There is least calls, meaning the least amount of connected calls. Right. So say Bob has spoken to 2 people, Mary has spoken to 5. Next call comes in, it's going to Bob under least calls. Right? And then there's least offered, which is the combination of missed and connected calls. So let's say Bob has been offered 20 calls, Mary's been offered 5. And under least offered, Mary gets the next call that comes in. Now, one thing to keep in mind for least offered and least calls, let's say a third person logs into that queue. Say Dylan logs in. Right, he'd be at 0 for offered or calls, so he would get the next call that comes in. All right, next up we got hold treatment, where you can upload a .wav.mp3 file recorded in mono. You can also select it from the media files that are already on the account. One difference here is for under ACD's Queues Pro, the whole treatment, you have more options, right? So under standard ACD queues, you can have a media file play. That's it. ACD Queues Pro, you can have things like the announced position in line, right? You can have a media file play. You can say, here's your expected wait time. You can have a different media file play, etc. All right, queue timeout, measured in seconds. This is how much time your inbound callers can wait on hold. Your queue call limit, this is how many people can wait on hold. Now this is on top of how many people are already speaking to your agents, right? So let's say Bob and Mary are both speaking to inbound callers, right, customers. 4 additional people can wait on hold. And then if a 5th call comes in, they would be routed to the escalation timeout down here. Timeout immediately if empty. If you enable this, this means if your staff members are not logged into the queue, right? No one's logged in, and a caller comes in, the system will treat that inbound caller as if they hit this timeout, the 3600 seconds. Right? Escalation queue, you can send callers to an additional queue, and if all your staff members are busy in this queue, it will send them to a second queue. And then the escalation call flow after timeout. So after this 3600 second timer is hit, I'm sending callers to this voicemail box. Now, obviously, I have a pull down here. So I can select none, meaning the call just simply ends. Right? I can send it to a different auto attendant. I can send it to a specific device. I can send it back to the smart directory. I can send it to one of my ring groups. I can have a media file play. Right? I can send it to a specific person, right? One of my users, or I can send it to a voicemail box. Now the agent behavior, the agent recovery time in seconds, in this case 30. So this is after an agent has finished a call in the queue, the system will give them 30 seconds before it offers them another call from this queue. All right, then we got force away on rejected or missed. If this is enabled, if your staff member misses a call, the system will automatically put them in away mode, and they will have to mark themselves as ready before they get a call again. And then agent connect timeout. This is how much time we're trying to reach that agent, ring their phones. 20 seconds, typically enough because they're only using VoIP phones in a queue. And then we'll go ahead and get out of this. All right, so once you have a queue created, over here on the left, you want to click on the members. And you see here, these are the people that I have added to queues, right? So they can be in any of my queues. If I click on manage members up here at the top, now you see I've got other staff members. If I click on them and click on add as a member, so now I moved Aaron, who was not part of my queue list. Now he's in the list, right? So now I can assign him to a queues if I want to. Once you've determined who is in your queues, you can go back to your queues. And if I click on the queue here, I can add agents. And then I would click and drag to add Aaron in. Right, and you notice it went up to 8. For adding managers, right, your managers have to come from your agent list. Right, so first you would add them as an agent, and then you would make them a manager. Now for your staff members, when they log in, right, they can log into Dash, they would click on queues, and then they would click on begin session. And so you see here, I'm logged into this queue. Right, I'm red because I'm marked away. Once I'm ready to take calls, I mark myself as ready, and I will turn green. Right, if I'm on an inbound call, my little border here will turn blue. If I'm on an outbound call, it will turn yellow. And if I'm on recovery time, I turn gold. Now, this is something as a manager, right? I can view everyone else. Your staff members can only see themselves. Right? And then let's say if I go to lunch, I mark myself away. Here you got the little phone icon. Your staff members can select what device they want to use. They should just select at least one of them. And then end of your day, you would just end the session. Now for ACDQs Pro, there's also another icon here for performance. So you can compare multiple agents to see how they're doing. Also within a queue, you have things like an activity log where you can see what was going on with a particular call. Also ACDQs Pro, probably the biggest feature is your managers. They can eavesdrop on a call. They can whisper to your staff member, right, to give them help as they're going through a call, or you can simply barge in because you don't want a call to get out of control. All right. Next up, we got blacklists. Now, blacklist is an included feature on all accounts. And what this does is it lets you create a list of phone numbers that you don't want to connect to your system. All right, so I clicked on edit lists. You click add to create a new one, or you can select an existing one. All right, you give a name a list, or you give the list a name. Pardon me. Block anonymous. If you turn this on, that means if we get invalid inbound caller ID, we will block the call. Right. Beyond that, you would click on add number. You put +1 area code and phone number for each phone number you want to block. Right. You just keep clicking. You enter it in, click add, enter in another one, click add. When you're done, you would click on save. Then you go back to settings, and then you move the list over here over to the right under selected. So any number on these two lists, when they try to call any number on my account, they get a busy tone, right? So they're not connecting. All right, and then you would click update. And then you're all set. All right, dynamic caller ID. Now this is a plan specific feature. What this does is you can create either a rule or your own feature code to change your outbound caller ID from your VoIP phones. All right, so we'll start with this one here at the bottom. All right, you give it a name, and then you select a phone number on your account, and then the feature code that you want to use. So from your VoIP phone, you pick up, you hit *71, you dial the phone number that you want to reach, and what the other person sees, right? Your outbound caller ID becomes this phone number. Check something, yeah. Oh, yeah, and you can also buy new local or toll-free numbers here. The other thing you can do is, like we have up here for the 408. So what I can do here is I create a rule: whenever my staff members pick up their VoIP phone and dial the 408 area code, their caller ID will show up as this 918 number. And I said this is plan specific, so you'd want to talk to our account services team if you're interested in that. The fax manager, this is on any account that has faxing enabled. This means you can get to any fax box on the account in terms of both inbound and outbound, so you can see what people are sending or what they're getting. You also can get to the email to fax log, which if there's an entry here, there's a little eyeball icon that shows up on the right. This will give you greater information about what happened when someone tried to fax out. Like they sent a bad like they didn't include a valid attachment, or they like used a personal email address versus their company email address. Those are the most common that we see. All right. Next up, we've got the monitor. This is also on specific plans. This allows you to see what the status of your staff members, right? So all my staff, because it's a test account, they're available, right? I could switch it from busy or strictly available. Over here, right, you can see who's on active calls, as well as who's on parked calls and the parking spot number. Number manager just takes you back to your spare numbers page. Pretty much gone over all of that. The recording manager, this takes you to recordings.virtualpbx.com, so you can see your recordings. Oh, this account doesn't have recordings. Reports, this takes you to advanced reporting. This is a plan-specific feature, so you'd want to talk to account services team, but basically reports is you can create your own reports to get better or more useful data to you in terms of what's going on with your call activity within your account. Right? It's going to be more detailed than what you get in the call logs. Voicemails, this gets you to the voicemail manager, so you can get to any of your staff members' voicemail boxes. All right, you can see their messages, the date they came in, and time, the phone number and who they came from, the phone number that was being dialed. Here's the duration, and then you can listen to the message or download it. Now, you have an option here to view everything, view just the new, the listened, deleted, etc. So like if I click on this one, all right, I can mark this as listened. And then instead, now I can also, if I just choose this, it will show me which ones were listened. You also have the option here to send a voicemail to a different user, right? So that it went to the wrong person, say, hey, go here. Webhooks, this allows you to link Dash to other software, like using Zapier, for example. If you're interested in webhooks, you do want to talk to our sales team. They actually have the information about webhooks, as well as some white papers. You can also look at developer.virtualpbx.com to see examples of what we have done with webhooks and Dash. And then lastly, we have the user portal. So each user on your account has their own user portal. Right? As an admin, you can basically get to everything else, so you don't need to get to their specific user portal. But so on their voicemail page, they would have voicemail show up if you have delete after notification turned off. Right? If you have it turned on, there's not going to be any voicemails to look at. But again, you can see the date, the time, who made the call, what phone number they called, etc., as well as listen to your messages and download them. Right. Once you put a check mark here, you can mark it as new, listened, or etc. Call history allows you to see inbound calls or inbound or outbound calls on your user. Faxes, you can see your fax history, although again the fax box on this account is broken. The contact list, this is everything within your Dash account, right? So you can see all the other users, the groups, the attendance, etc. This is not something a user can add to, right? So like your salespeople would not be able to add their client list, right? This is just within your account. Next up, we've got the conference tab. So over here on the right, this is where your staff members can change their moderator PIN as well as their participant PIN number. And then they have the options if they want people who are joining to be muted or deafened to begin the conference, as well as the options to play entry and exit tones. Then over here, this is where you can invite other Dash users to your conference. right? You can lock a conference here. You mute everybody, unmute everybody. You can end the conference. When you're actually in a conference, you actually have additional icons for the participants. So like you can mute a specific person or kick a specific person. Right. And then settings and devices. This is where your users would enable their own call forwarding. Right. They put the little check mark. They put +1 area code and phone number. Also, if they wanted to ring their VoIP phone, etc., etc. And then they would click save. And they can also see the status of their devices. And that is everything here. I'm going to go back to the dashboard real quick. I'm going to hang out here for a minute or so in case anyone has any questions. I haven't seen any pop up. But beyond that, give people just a minute here. All right, not seeing any questions come through, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. Thank you for your time today, and we will be back next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. Have a wonderful day.